How you guys doing today? I'm John Murdy, creative director and producer of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood.
I am Chris Williams, art director and production designer of Halloween Horror Nights.
And Chris and I brought Halloween Horror Nights back to Universal Studios Hollywood. If you guys are fans, you might know it was gone for a long time. And we did that in 2006, so every year since that, Chris and I have created all the mazes and attractions. And today, if you've been following us on social media, which apparently you do, we told you guys that we have a big announcement. Actually, we're going to announce our next maze live on stage today.
Yeah!
So I'm going to ask our guys to run the video.
Yeah.
You like that one, yeah? And you know, I actually have to credit you guys on social media because when the first Insidious movie came out, I noticed a whole lot of you saying, you should do Insidious. You should do Insidious. And so with the new movie coming out this year, Chris and I talked about it. And then we had to figure out how to make this deal. So we actually have a special guest who's going to join us out here today. We'd like to invite to the stage our good friend Jason Blum. Welcome, Jason.
Hello again.
So we actually all met many moons ago at Halloween Horror Nights. Do you remember this, Jason?
Yes, we did on the opening of Friday Night of Paranormal 2, right, with Rob Zombie. Yeah, we went. It was my first Halloween Horror Night experience, and I was looking at my BlackBerry.
A lot.
And because it was Paranormal 2, so the only sequel that all of us were thinking about at that time was Blair Witch, because that was the only found footage horror movie that had a sequel. And so we just were really hoping that our sequel went a little better than that sequel. And that night we found out that it did. So it was a very happy night for us.
It was really surreal, yeah.
It was crazy.
I remember taking Jason through mazes, and Chris was taking him through mazes, and you know, it was constantly looking at the BlackBerry because you were getting the box office live, I think, that night.
Yes. It was a great night. It was very fun.
So ever since then, we've been talking about, you know, working together on something, and it's taken until now until we could hook up on Insidious. Do you mind talking a little bit about the second film and why you think it makes a great maze?
No, I'm happy to. So the second film is kind of like the first. One of the things I learned actually a lot on Paranormal, and then we didn't do as much on Paranormal on those sequels, is the first is kind of answer a lot of questions. And so when I was talking to, well, first of all, it was very much in question whether James and Lee were going to actually do a sequel. And until they said no, there were a lot of financiers who were like, you gotta go make it. And I kept going back and I kept saying, as long as James and Lee are saying maybe, we're not gonna make the sequel, because I really, if they do it, it'll be better than if anybody else does it. So we had to wait a while for them to actually come around, but I was really happy they finally landed on an idea that they liked enough to make a second movie. The second movie answers a lot of questions in the first movie. We spent a lot of time in the further and these kind of what hopefully have become kind of Insidious iconic places. And that is what we're going to walk through very soon, right?
Yeah, and I should say, if you guys are fans of the Insidious franchise, we're not just doing Insidious 2, we're actually doing the entire franchise. Insidious and Insidious Part 2, and in just a little bit we're going to take you guys through a behind-the-scenes presentation and show you some of the things we're working on. But I wanted to ask real quick on the subject of paranormal. I know I've actually resisted doing paranormal mazes for Halloween Horror Nights because, you know, what we do is, you know, it's so visceral. It's always, you know, you're walking in a scene, you got 10 seconds to execute that scene. But Chris here is a big fan of all things paranormal. So I wanted to maybe ask Chris why he was attracted to doing Insidious.
I think that when you look at the first film and you see the ghosts in there that are very tangible and actually are very physical and can do physical things to you, which is harm you. You might see some of that actually in the second film, but we had felt that we could embrace that with our characters and make all that come to life.
And one of the other funny things is last year at Horror Nights, James came, and James and Lee are big Horror Nights fans.
Big fans. Yeah, I actually learned originally. I think I learned about Horror Nights a lot from James and Lee, and then Rob. But James and Lee always talked about it. And James, is he getting your? No, we don't know yet. We do know yet. Did he ever get it? You're looking at me like I don't know.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah. Did he ever get? Has he gotten the award? The special award? Has he gotten?
I think he'll get an award.
You think he'll get an award? That's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's funny.
I'll tell you a funny story about the ghosts in Insidious. So when James, this is one of the reason that we make all of our movies inexpensively is so that we can do weird stuff and take chances. The higher the price of a movie, the less kind of risks you can take. So when James and Lee first pitched Insidious, James said that the third act of the movie, the further, was going to be exactly like a David Lynch movie. And the fun thing about making inexpensive movies is that if I were an executive and Insidious was a $20 million movie, you'd say, James, you're out of your mind. You're not making a David Lynch movie with the third act of this movie, you know? You have to, we can't do that. And happily, we were making a very inexpensive movie, so I was like, well, one of the things I often tell directors before they do these movies is, what have you always wanted to do in a horror movie, but you've always been told you can't? Like, try that. And so that's why those ghosts are so, it's 100% James and Lee's creation, and the reason that they were able to do that and try something new is that they were, you know, we weren't working with a lot of resources, so you can take creative risks. And now we get a maze.
Exactly. And, you know, it's funny how these things come to be, you know, all these different deals that, and the people we get to work with in the filmmaking community. But last year during Horror Nights, if you've ever been on the Universal lot, particularly the back lot, and I know you know that, I know that you know this, the phone reception is horrible, right? When you're out on the back lot. You can never, like, you'll get a call and you can't hear who's calling you. And my phone kept ringing this one particular night at Horror Nights, and I didn't recognize the number, and I think I was with the producers of Walking Dead that night. So I was like, whatever. And then I got home later that night, and I thought, I should check those messages, and it was James. And he'd just gone through La Llorona, and he was like, oh my God, La Llorona. And he's like, we should work together, we should work together, we should work together. So that actually started last year, and then when Chris and I came over to Blumhouse for that first meeting with all of you guys, James, Lee, Jason, we all sat down, and then Lee told a very funny story about his experiences in Horror Nights, because we actually, you know, they were the creators of Saw. You know, if you know the Saw franchise, James and Lee created that franchise.